Kofi knew there was only one way to be with Zara. His father had to die. In a village far away, nestled between tall mountains and dense forests, there lived a young prince named Kofi. The village was small but full of life. The people were kind and hardworking, and they deeply respected their traditions. Kofi was loved by all, not just because he was a prince, but because he was gentle and wise beyond his years. He cared for his people, always taking time to listen to their problems and help whenever he could. But in this village, there was one rule that was never broken, and no one could marry a foreigner. The elders believed that to keep their culture and traditions pure, they had to marry only within their own people. The rule was strict, and no one dared to question it, not even the royal family. One day, a group of traders arrived in the village. They came from lands far beyond the mountains and forests, bringing with them goods that the villagers had never seen before, brightly colored fabrics, spices that smelled of distant places, and stories of lands beyond the horizon. Among these traders was a young woman named Zara. Zara was unlike anyone Kofi had ever seen. She had skin that glowed like honey in the sunlight and eyes that sparkled with a light all their own. Her hair was long and dark, flowing like a river down her back. She was confident and kind, and she carried herself with a grace that captivated everyone who saw her. Kofi first noticed Zara in the marketplace. She was haggling with a vendor over a piece of jewelry, her voice full of laughter. There was something about her laugh that drew Kofi in, something that made him want to hear it again and again. "Welcome to our village," Kofi said, approaching her with a smile. "I hope you find it as beautiful as your homeland." Zara looked up, surprised to see the prince speaking to her. She had heard about him from the other traders, how he was beloved by his people and how he was destined to be a great king. She smiled back at him, a smile that made Kofi's heart skip a beat. "It is beautiful," she replied softly. "But I find there is more than just beauty in this place. There is something special here." Kofi's curiosity was piqued. "And what is that?" Zara looked into his eyes, and for a moment, it was as if the whole world had stopped. "Perhaps it's not the place," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Perhaps it's the people." From that moment on, Kofi and Zara were drawn to each other like moths to a flame. They began meeting in secret, always careful to avoid the watchful eyes of the villagers and the royal court. They would meet at night by the river that ran through the village, where the moonlight danced on the water and the stars watched over them like silent guardians. They talked for hours, sharing stories of their lives. Kofi told Zara about his village, about the traditions he had grown up with, and about the weight of responsibility he felt as the future king. Zara, in turn, told him about her homeland, a place far to the east where the sun rose over the desert and set behind the mountains. She spoke of the freedom she felt on the open road, the thrill of discovering new places and meeting new people. As they spent more time together, Kofi realized that he was falling in love with Zara. He loved her laughter, her kindness, and her spirit. But more than anything, he loved the way she made him feel, alive, free, and full of hope. But deep down, Kofi knew that their love was forbidden. The rule was clear: no one in the village could marry a foreigner. It was a law that had been in place for generations, and breaking it would mean dishonor and exile. Still, Kofi couldn't stay away from Zara. Every time they were together, it felt like the rest of the world didn't matter. It was just the two of them, lost in their own little world, dreaming of a future where they could be together without fear. But rumors began to spread. The villagers noticed that Kofi was spending a lot of time away from the palace, and whispers started to circulate about his meetings with a foreign woman. It wasn't long before these whispers reached the ears of the king, Kofi's father. The king was a man of tradition. He had ruled the village with a firm hand, always ensuring that the laws were followed and that the people respected their customs. When he heard about Kofi and Zara, he was furious. He summoned Kofi to his chambers, his face dark with anger. "Kofi," the king said sternly, "I have heard troubling things. Is it true that you have been meeting with a foreign woman?" Kofi stood before his father, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew there was no point in lying. "Yes, father," he said quietly. "It is true." The king's eyes narrowed. "You know our laws, Kofi. You know what is forbidden." "I know," Kofi replied, his voice steady but full of emotion. "But I love her, father. I love her more than anything in this world." The king shook his head, his face hardening. "Love does not change the law. If you continue to see her, you will be banished from this village. And she will be sent away, never to return." Kofi felt as if the ground had been pulled out from under him. Banished. Sent away. The thought of losing Zara was more than he could bear. But he knew his father. The king was stubborn and set in his ways. He would never allow Kofi to change the law, no matter how much Kofi loved Zara. That night, Kofi met Zara by the river, just as they always did. But this time, there was no joy in their meeting. Zara could see the pain in Kofi's eyes. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice full of concern. Kofi took her hands in his, holding them tightly. "My father knows about us," he said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "He said if we continue to see each other, I will be banished, and you will be sent away forever." Zara's heart sank. She had feared this moment would come, but hearing the words still felt like a dagger to her heart. "What will we do?" she asked, her voice trembling. Kofi looked into her eyes, and in that moment, he made a decision. He knew what he had to do, even though it filled him with dread. He couldn't lose Zara, and he couldn't let her be sent away. The only way to be with her was to become king, and the only way to become king was to remove his father from the throne. "I can't let them take you away from me," Kofi said, his voice firm. "I will do whatever it takes to be with you." Zara looked at him, her eyes filled with fear and love. "What are you saying, Kofi?" Kofi hesitated for a moment, knowing the gravity of what he was about to do. "I have to become king," he said finally. "And to do that, my father must die." Zara gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Kofi, no. You can't." But Kofi had already made up his mind. "I have no choice, Zara. If I don't, we can never be together. I can't let that happen." That night, Kofi waited until the palace was quiet and everyone was asleep. He slipped into his father's chambers, his heart pounding in his chest. The king was asleep, unaware of the danger that lurked in the shadows. Kofi approached the bed, his hands trembling as he pulled a small vial from his pocket. It was poison, something he had taken from the palace healer's stores. He had to be careful. If anyone suspected foul play, everything would be lost. He poured the poison into the king's cup, making sure it would look like a natural death. His hands shook as he placed the cup back on the table beside the bed. Then he left the room, his heart heavy with the knowledge of what he had done. The next morning, the king's death was discovered. The village mourned, believing their ruler had passed away in his sleep. Kofi played the part of the grieving son, but inside he was tormented by guilt and fear. He had taken a life, the life of his own father, to be with the woman he loved. But he knew it was the only way. As the new king, Kofi's first act was to change the law. He gathered the villagers and made an announcement. "Today, I make a new law," he said, his voice strong and clear. "From this day forward, a love shall have no boundaries. Anyone may marry whomever they choose, regardless of where they come from." The villagers were shocked at first, but many of them had seen the love between Kofi and Zara, and they could not deny its power. Slowly, they began to cheer, accepting the new law. Soon after, Kofi and Zara were married in a grand ceremony. The whole village celebrated, and the joy in the air was palpable. Kofi had done what he believed he had to do, and now he could finally be with the woman he loved. Kofi and Zara ruled together, bringing peace and prosperity to the village. They were loved and respected by all, and their love story became a legend, told for generations as a reminder that love is stronger than any law. But late at night, when the village was quiet, Kofi would sometimes sit by the river where he and Zara had first met, and he would think about his father. He knew that what he had done could never be undone. But as he looked at Zara smiling beside him, he knew that he would do it all over again. For love, he had changed the fate of his village, and for love, he had found his true place in the world. But little did Kofi know, his evil twin brother, Ikof, who was banished from the African village by the king, had heard of the king's passing, and had his own plans for the future of the village. To be continued. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe.